Hello, 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 and welcome. It is Kindred Skulls. My name is Gregg Blake. We've got a great show for you this evening. The Minnesota Vikings down the Chicago Bears, as everyone expected, in a very close battle, 29-22, as expected. Vikings are 4-1. The first quarter of the season is behind us, and we're in a really good spot. And I'm joining, as always, one of my co-hosts, Matt Freese. How are you this evening?
I'm doing excellent, Greg. I'm doing excellent. It's good to get a win, even if it's not the best. I think Harrison Smith said it best. Like, it's good to be learning as a team. It's good that the Vikings are learning as a team. They're going through some struggles, but they're still putting up wins in the win column.
Yep. Winning dirty is still winning, as they say, right? Or winning ugly is still winning. You'll notice I changed my intro up a little bit tonight, Matt, because you guys gave me such a hard time last week. Nick mostly.
I did,
Last 2 weeks
but
ago. Yeah.
no, I think the intro was on point tonight. I
You
don't
like
have
my little
anything to complain
switch it up?
about.
Okay.
Full grades,
I'll
full
stick with
marks.
that from now on. I'm joining you. Yeah, so we're in a good spot. We've got four somewhat strange, kind of wonky wins. We'll talk a little bit about that. But let's talk about first this game against the Chicago Bears. And I'll admit, I did not have the best viewing experience this week. I was in a bar that was foreign to me. Not even all the games were on. I had the Vikings I begged for it up in the little corner.
Sure.
Didn't have sound,
I've
but
been there
even
before. I've been there before.
yeah, I was slugging beers, just trying to like follow what's happening in the game. And so I didn't have the best viewing experience. But I have to admit to you, even given all those factors, my friend being there with me, given all that, it felt to me kind of like I've watched this game a few times this year. It felt to me like there's some
Mm-hmm.
familiar elements, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure we'll get into that a little bit. What was your experience this week watching the game?
I
What
mean,
was your
I was watching it at home. I missed like the first couple drives of the game, so I was just running some errands and that ran a little late. So I missed that first touchdown, but I think I got the full Vikings first drive experience in the subsequent two drives where we went up 21-3. And honestly, my first thought was this game kind of reminded me of the Raiders game a few years ago. I think that was back in 2018, I want to say, or 2019. It was 2019 where we jumped out to a very early lead on them and we just kind of put them away and it wasn't much of a contest. And then it kind of flipped to the Saints game last week where we just let the Bears hang around for too long, right? And hanging around, they were eventually able to come back and we have to kind of scramble at the end to win the game. So, it was more the Vikings' inability to step on the throat of the other team that's kind of a concern for me coming out of this game. And I think really it was self-inflicted errors that let them back into the game. Right? We had that terrible punt, right? Ryan Wright, who has been doing a phenomenal job this year so far. Let's give him credit. His only punt of the game, he completely shanked. We had two missed field goals that completely changed the tenor of the game. Granted, they were long field goal attempts, and then we had the Kirk interceptions. That was our four. Those were the only four drives where we didn't score. They were back to back to back to back, and they really let the Bears get back into this game. This was a short game by drive standards. There were only 8 or 9 drives for each team, and the Vikings' ninth drive was their kneel down at the end, so it's not even really a drive.
Hmm.
So it was a short game filled with long drives, and the Vikings were fortunately able to pull it out. But that's what kind of helped the Bears stick around, I think,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately in the game.
Yeah, well, I think that's definitely my impression of things, and I'll add this was kind of in the news a lot this week. One of the other things that you talked about that jumping out to a big lead, 21 to
Mm-hmm.
3. Another thing that's been tripping us up kind of all year is the third quarter. Um, uh, Timberwolves fans will remember our third quarter problems from a couple of seasons ago. It was a legitimate detriment to anything we could achieve, the Wolves could achieve as a team that year. It seems like the Vikings have some, whether it's fluky or not, whether it's something that's correctable or not. We seem to have a little bit of a third quarter problem. Um, what did you think of the third quarter this weekend? Do Do you agree with that sort of impression? I mean, the
Yeah,
stats are kind of
I don't
stark.
really get that impression from the Vikings. I think the defense has actually improved in the third quarter. If you look at the totality of the season, it's more been the offense that slowed down. I think outside of the initial scripted plays, maybe the offense is a little bit of a concern. But another thing you have to look at in this game is the Bears got the ball first, and they ended up holding the ball for a long time in that quarter. Right? The Vikings only had 2 drives in the quarter, right? One, they started near midfield, and that ended with a missed field goal. So I think we got a first down or something and eventually missed a field goal, or we just didn't get the first down in the initial plays. It was a very short drive. The Bears come back, have a long drive, and then the Vikings have another drive where they actually get going a little bit, but then Kirk throws the interception, and then that's the end of the quarter, right? So I think that even those drives in the middle, the Vikings were relatively successful. Like, we moved the ball on 2 of those 3 drives, and we had a short field on the other one where we ended up missing a field goal. So I think that the Vikings were relatively successful, even on the drives where they failed. It was just they weren't able to get over the hump and actually score points on those drives. And that was more the issue is finishing, I think, than a lack of consistency or a particular quarter to me.
Okay. Okay. Well, we also had some special teams problems in this game, right? We
Yeah,
had
absolutely. It was. I mean,
opportunities.
we've been giving a lot of credit to Mac Daniels and the special teams. This was a very bad special teams game for the Vikings. 2 missed field goals, the shanked punt, and that's about as bad as you can get. We kind of got bailed out by that fourth down play where the Bears got called for the penalty, shooting the gap, the holding penalty. That allowed us to extend a drive, but it was a lot.
So you had the sort of the wonky offensive performance, which we've come to kind of not expect, but we recognize it at this point. You think it has something to do with unscripted plays. That makes a lot of sense to me. That there might be something happening there, communication issues.
Yeah, and
It's still young.
I've got another one where we'll go into tape talk later in this episode, where I'll talk about kind of the difference in the Vikings' successful drive on their offense and their unsuccessful drives in terms of
Well,
what the play calling was and that sort of thing. So we're going to table that for a little bit later.
yeah, looking forward to that. And the other issue in this particular game is, we go out to that 21-3 lead.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the offense, the special teams, the interception, all these different things kind of come together, and we also have some struggles on defense, and we actually let the Bears take the lead somehow from 21 up 21-3. What did you notice during that sort of stretch, setting aside the special teams, setting aside the offensive stuff? Maybe it's too many reps. Like, what did you notice happening defensively while that was going
Yeah,
on?
so I thought there were a couple big plays. Obviously the Darnell Mooney pretty nice catch on that one was a pretty incredible one. It was
Awesome
kind of more
catch.
of the same of what we've been complaining about for the defense the whole year, though, is they just can't seem to make stops. They leave too much space open in the passing game, and that's what was happening. We had the added element of Justin Fields running with his legs in this game, which really gashed us on a couple instances, and obviously could have gashed us even more.
We seem to have kind of a problem with that, don't we? It seems like those quarterbacks who can really move.
Yeah,
Uh, you think that's going to be something that's going to bite us all year?
yeah.
Something
Jalen Hurts did it a little bit. And I went and looked at our rush layering, our pass rush layering, which is what you need to rely on to kind of help with defending quarterbacks against Justin Fields.
What does that mean for some listeners?
So what it means is when you have a set of pass rushers, you have your 4 guys, Danielle Hunter, Dalvin Tomlinson. The Vikings a lot of times on pass rush downs, it'll be Danielle Hunter, Zadarius Smith, a defensive tackle, whether that's Dalvin Tomlinson, Ross Blacklock, Harrison Phillips, whoever we choose to put in, and DJ Wanham. They have a specific landmark that they're rushing to. So let's say we're expecting the quarterback to drop back to 7 yards. They're trying to get to 7 yards, but they're trying to do it in different ways. So one player, and the Danielle Hunter sack on the first drive is a great example of this. DJ Wanham takes the edge, and then Danielle Hunter cuts underneath. So rather than both of those players trying to win around the edge, that could lead to them getting pushed upfield, the quarterback being able to climb in the pocket and get away. What it does is DJ Wanham running around the edge, and he beat the left tackle around the edge on that play, forced Justin Fields to move up and to his right directly to where Danielle Hunter was standing. So Danielle Hunter took a slower rush and then collapsed inside rather than going around to the outside, leaving an exposed lane. So that was an example of good rush layering.
Okay.
There was
And
another
that's
one.
kind of how you design that is how you would potentially try to deal with a sort of a mobile quarterback like Justin Fields.
Yeah, and that's something that's discussed in the game plan during the week with the defensive line coach, where guys will say, "Hey, on this rush from this package, whatever we want to do, we're going to rush in this order," and you're all trying to hold your gaps there. You're all kind of
Okay.
trying to hold. And Mike Zimmer was great at coordinating these pass rush packages to have this rush layering that led to tons of secondary sacks, right, where Danielle Hunter would create a sack from somebody else. If you remember the year where Everson Griffin and Danielle Hunter essentially flip-flopped in terms of the sacks, like Griffin had 14 sacks one year and Hunter had 7, and then Hunter had 14 and Griffin had 7. That was because they were basically trading off of one person would flush the quarterback from the pocket and the other person would sack him. And it basically went from one to the other.
I missed watching those two. I got to be honest with you. Daniil at his, I hope he comes back to his heights. Anyway, continue. You were you were explaining how the Bears were sort of kicking our ass there for a stretch. 19
So Fields just kind of got out of the pocket. He was able to get by the outstretched arms of Delvin Tomlinson on one play. He was just able to get by guys, and there were a couple instances where he made Jordan Hicks kind of miss in the open field, where the Vikings had Jordan Hicks in his zone, where he was able to see the quarterback and try to make a play on him, but he just missed. One thing we did try in this game, which seemed pretty successful, although he never ended up making a tackle, was Brian Asamoah. In those instances, though, Fields was mostly able to get the ball out. The one instance where he wasn't was a Zadarius Smith sack, that sack fumble on the last drive of the game. So it's like it was a combination of, once again, the coverage on the back end not being as tight, which is a problem we've had all year. It's a problem we're probably just going to consistently have unless they find a way to markedly improve it. And then also letting Justin Fields get out there. I thought we kind of limited the Bears' run game, but on those drives, and giving the Bears short fields in the instances where we turned it over, right? It's not like they had 20 yards ever to go, but, they were starting near the 50-yard line on 2 or 3 of those on 3 or 4 of those drives, I would say.
That's one of those things you tend to forget about, in the week after a game.
And that's because if you look at the box score, the Vikings dominated the box score. We had 400 some yards to their 270 something. We had almost double the number of first downs. We were 12 for 15 on third down compared to the Bears being at a much more average rate. We kind of dominated that box score. It was just kind of the field position battle, which we lost, I would say, for most of the game, that caused us to struggle.
Okay. Well, so we gave up 19 unanswered points, and things are looking a little
dicey.
The game is in the balance for some reason. This is the Chicago Bears. What in God's name is happening? And yet, as has been the case this year, needing a really crucial drive to at least put ourselves in a position to win. That's exactly what happens. The quarterback drives us down the field. We end up getting what would turn out to be the winning score. Walk us through that final drive a little bit. What did you see? Did we try anything different? Did we just execute? What did you see there?
So the final drive, and why don't we roll this into Tape Talk? Because I really have a lot of notes on this from what I did on Tape Talk.
There's really no reason to discuss the rip away fumble. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's the Chicago Bears. They end up giving us the game.
We'll get to double agent Amir Smith-Marset later, but we'll jump right into Tape Talk right now.
Sign him to screw us, and he ends up screwing you.
And kind of the first thing I wanted to look at was the Vikings' usage of play action in this game, and also the Bears' and I think it coincides with the Bears' usage of single high coverage. I think if you look overall at the way the game ebbed and flowed on those first 3 drives and on the final drive, the Vikings used a lot more play action, and B, the Bears used a lot more single high coverage. We were gashing them in single high coverage early on. If you look at that rate, the first 3 drives, the Bears played single high 17 out of 27 plays. That's 63%. If you look at the 4 drives in the middle, the Bears played single high on 2 of 24 plays. So that's a really stark difference, and we were
Hmm.
not able to get anything. We weren't really able to get much going in the pass game against the Bears single high coverage. Granted,
Wow.
a chunk in the middle of that, 6 plays in the middle of that was the 2 minute drive at the end of the first half. So we pretty much have to throw. So they're going to play single high, and we're gonna not use play action in that scenario. So there is a little bit of poisoning of the data there, but it's still stark that it's 2 out of 24 plays, right? Like even if
Right.
you remove those 6 plays, it's so many that were that they were in too high. If you look
Okay.
at our passes against the Bears in too high before the final drive, we were 7 of 19 in terms of success. So we were like 37% successful. Final drive, we had 3 successes. We had 3 pass attempts into the too high coverage, and we had 3 successes. So again, it's a stark difference just in terms of how we were able to be successful. We ran a few more play action you know plays on that final drive. We ran 3 under center play actions and 1 gun play action out of 9 passes. The first 14, I'm sorry, what do I have here? What are my notes here? We ran play action on 28 plays of our successful drives. We
Hmm.
ran play action on just 3 plays out of 17 plays on our unsuccessful drives. Again, that
Hmm.
was partly because of that 2 minute drill. But again, it's a stark difference, right? We're running well over half of our plays play action on the drives where we were successful, and we're running like 3 plays of play action on the drives where we weren't successful. So play action was a
Huh.
huge differentiator in this game. When the Bears went to too high, we were a lot more successful running the ball. We were successful on 10 out of 16 runs running the ball against too high. I mean, that was when Dalvin was starting to gain those like 10 yard chunk gains. But overall, it limited our offense when the opponent went to too high. I thought that the Bears coming out in single high was just a bad game plan, honestly. And I
Hmm.
think that kind of bears out against this Vikings team. You're gonna want to play too high, force them to run and play ball control because I don't know if we're gonna be able to consistently pass against it. We might.
Okay.
We kind of got into the groove towards the end there, but yeah.
Do you find it at all concerning? Well, first of all, do you think it's a trend? Is it something that's I'll explain what I mean in a second. Do, do you think it's a trend, as in you've seen it happen all year? And do you think it's concerning that we need to rely on play action so much? I love play action, but you can't run that all the time, right? So do you think it's something that we've been struggling with all year? First of all, uh, or not struggling with, but it's something that we need to run. Do we need to
hmm
run play action to be successful? I guess is what I'm asking you.
So I would say that actually my understanding is the Vikings play action rate this season has been a lot lower than their play action rate in previous seasons.
Okay.
Now, this game it was much higher than it has been for the majority of the season, and we've seen up and downs with the Vikings offense, right? I mean, I guess I would really only consider the Eagles game a down, and that was a scenario where we did not run much play action at all, and it really didn't help us out. And the single high versus two high thing, I think there's also a talent factor there. Like the Bears just are not a very talented football team. So you're
There's
going to
not.
have a very successful offensive day against them. And I would argue we were pretty successful even in the drives where we didn't score. So even though you're seeing like that stark difference in how much we were successful, we were still getting the field goal range most of the time, right? Even when we threw the interception, we were in field goal range. So I'd say it's not a death knell or the end of the world, but it is also interesting that we know Kirk Cousins is very very good on play action. Like that's been the defining feature of his tenure in the Minnesota Vikings is his success on play action. Like that's where he is best. Um, so I would say that when we need to drop back to pass, we haven't proven that we can do that like from gun from pure drop back on a consistent basis this season, but we haven't had to do that very often. And the hope is, I guess, that we can keep up scoring with other teams.
Yeah, definitely. Um, well, let's stay on this for a second, a little bit. talk to us a little bit about the scoring drives themselves. Now we're in tape talk, baby. Let's dive
Yeah.
in a little bit. What was some of the most fun and interesting stuff you were seeing Coach Kev kind of cook up this week?
So, I mean,
Um,
I think a continuation of the goal line stuff from what Nick said last week. Obviously, the Jalen Rager pop pass touchdown was pretty cool. Uh, Giving Kirk the freedom to run a QB sneak. I can't remember the last time we've seen a QB sneak on that, pivotal third down play.
yeah,
Um,
it's well,
and then from the passing game, just getting Justin Jefferson involved in so many different ways. I think the Bears kind of allowed it to happen because they were putting Jalen Jones, who's like a rookie undrafted free agent, on Justin Jefferson in one-on-one coverage or in these single high situations where he's functionally in one-on-one coverage, and it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. There were a lot of designed rollouts, that sort of thing. We've seen that for years now, given that we've been running the Kubiak offense, right? Like, so I don't think any of that is shocking, but just making sure Justin Jefferson is involved consistently, and some of the low red zone designs I think were my favorite parts of it. I don't have anything in particular to pull out here. The main thing I was focusing on was kind of this difference when we were seeing the under center play
gotcha.
action versus
Yeah.
gun not play action. That's another thing I wanted to mention is that when we were in gun, when we were in under center, we ran play action. Every single under center drop back was play action, which is pretty
Wow.
common for today's NFL. The Vikings last year were one of the very few teams that used straight drop back out of under center. Like almost every team, if you're running an under center passing play, and the Rams in particular were notorious for this split with Jared Goff, where every under center passing play was play action, and every single shotgun play was a pass. And the Vikings have kind of lived up to that same standard this year, so that might be a bit of a concern for us moving forward because we've
That's
seen this offense
that's
before, and it was the
that word
Jared Goff
is
offense.
right. That the word is predictable, right? You don't always want to be
Yeah,
predictable in that way. Um, okay, but for the most part, really good week. You saw a lot of things you like.
yeah, I
Uh,
like the offensive performance this week. I thought it was really positive moving forward. Again, the level of opponent isn't that high, so I'm not sure if it's something to be
right.
thrilled about. And I think that's kind of the feeling you got after the game, right? Is the Vikings won, they're 4-1. That's great, but I'm still really frustrated that they almost lost to the Bears.
It's very aggravating to watch at the moment. Let's hope that they tighten some of this stuff up. Did you want to touch on some of the specifics about Justin Fields at all scrambling
Yeah,
this week?
yeah. So we talked about it a bit earlier. I talked about layering the
Yep.
rushes. So I went back and I looked at every single kind of scramble, and I might have missed one on the first drive, but every single kind of scramble play or extended play that Justin Fields had when he dropped back into the pocket. I ignored rollouts and that sort of thing for these purposes because rollouts you kind of throw your rush layering out the window, right? The quarterback's on the move. So the first play was the Hunter sack. I already detailed that, where they did a really good job of layering, and Hunter was able to come under after Wanham went over and kind of forced him up into the pocket. And then there were two plays, and the two I would say biggest scrambles were actually screen plays that the Vikings defended well. And I'm not sure as a coach, honestly, like I'm not a coach, right? I don't really know. I'm not sure what you say as a coaching staff to these plays because the Vikings defensive line identified screen immediately, played the screen very well, and Justin Fields saw that, realized he couldn't throw the screen, and pulled the ball and ran. So the point of a screenplay is for the offensive line to kind of trick the defensive lineman into rushing the quarterback, right? You
Right,
want
right.
the defensive lineman to go after the quarterback so he can toss it over them and get the screen. So in this instance, you don't have anybody running at Justin Fields because they've recognized the play too well, and then Justin Fields is able to get out of it and make Jordan Hicks miss or whatever and get significant yardage. He did that on the a pivotal third down conversion, and he did that on that touchdown run that he had that got called back.
Right.
So it's like I don't know what to say to the guys on that play, right? Because they made the correct read. It just the play and Justin Fields' improvisational ability kind of beat them there.
Right.
Um, so the third play was in the on the goal line when Jordan Hicks had the defended pass. Zadarius Smith forced him off his spot. Harrison Phillips was there to corral him as he tried to move up in the pocket, so he moves out of the pocket, and Jordan Hicks makes a nice play and deflects the pass. So that was a positive example of that rush layering. And then there was an issue on the next one where Zadarius Smith lost his contain. So he was bull rushing against Tevin Jenkins, who was actually a guard on the play, and Jenkins was able to torque him into a different rush lane, and that allowed Fields to escape the pocket. So that's a loss of discipline, a loss of contain there that allowed Fields to escape. The fifth play was a corner blitz where either DJ Wanham or Cameron Dantzler screwed up because Wanham bull rushed a tight end right into Fields, and so he went on the inside of the tight end, and Dantzler also tried to rush on the inside of the tight end. So there's nobody playing contain on the outside. That's a problem because it allowed Justin Fields to escape the pocket and run for a significant gain. There was another one where I thought Ross Blacklock got too far upfield. You had two players from the same side, both taking an outside track against their guys and getting pushed behind the pocket. That allowed a really big space for Justin Fields to step up. And then on the final sack, it was very similar to the first sack with Hunter, where Wanham won around the edge and forced Fields to step up into Zadarius Smith. So you have a mixed bag where when it's the edge rushers playing together, I think they do a good job of forcing that. I think you saw that on the first and the final sack, and then that other play where they deflected it. On the screen plays, again, that was 2 of the 9 plays were the screen plays. I don't know what to say to the guys, but when we were blitzing or when we were doing funky stuff with the front, that's when they kind of lost contain and we weren't able to hold up. So we might need to relook at that package against mobile quarterbacks, which
let's dig into that a little bit. Do you think that this is an area where we desperately need improvement, given that we've had a couple of mobile, spontaneous, creative guys who kind of did some stuff to us? It's not the last time we're going to face that kind of player. Do you think that this is something that we need desperately to fix? And if so, how do you think we'd fix it?
So, I guess to answer the first question, I don't think we play all that many mobile quarterbacks, although that is an obstacle that you need to overcome in the playoffs. So, yes, we need to fix it. It's an issue. I think you overcome that with familiarity and guys understanding their roles. Like on that Wanham Dantzler mess up, Cameron Dantzler is not typically blitzing on a play. So you need to coach him up well and make sure he understands where he needs to be. Or DJ Wanham alternately needs to understand he's facing a mobile quarterback and he can't allow himself to get gashed by freelancing on his rush path. You know what I mean? It's just an understanding and a cohesiveness, and I think that is something that needs to be learned in this defense. And I think it's kind of been talked about as part of the root cause of our issues. Now, the other side of that is, and I think this is for our pass rush in general, we need the coverage to tighten up on the back end as well. So it's not only the rush plan has to mesh together, but it's also the coverage has to tighten up on the back end, because the other instance is guys might be beating offensive linemen, but we're not able to sack the quarterback because he gets the ball out too quickly because there's an open wide receiver. So I think in general, it's a defensive cohesiveness, which is not something I necessarily expected them to need at the beginning of the season, given how many pieces we were returning, right? If you look at this defense, almost everybody was on this roster last year. Not almost everybody, but there's like 6 or 7 players who are on this roster last year, right? The new players are Jordan Hicks, Chandon Sullivan, Zadarius Smith, and Harrison Phillips. So we returned 7 of the starters. And I guess it's familiar, and a lot of them are very intelligent veterans who we've praised for a long time for being very intelligent, in Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, and Patrick Peterson, right? So you wish that they were more on the same page, and I do want to say I think a lot of the busts in the coverage end are coming from Chandon Sullivan and Jordan Hicks and also Cameron Dantzler. So it's sure. It's specific players I think we need to kind of get up to par.
Cam Dantzler's come a long way. He's still a little boom or bust, though. He needs to work on consistency.
I would say that Cam Dantzler is less boom or bust because he avoids giving up the big play, but he is avoiding giving up the big play at the detriment of consistently letting up small plays.
Sure. And we usually I have one bone to pick with you, actually.
Go ahead.
So you had said that it's not something that we need to be too concerned about because we don't face mobile quarterbacks. I want to give you a list of quarterbacks we're about to face. We still have to, I'm not worried about this next weekend. We'll get into that in a second. We have the Cardinals in 2 weeks with Kyler Murray. Week after that, we have Carson Wentz and the Commanders. Right after that, we have Josh Allen and the Bills. We have Dak Prescott, not as mobile as he used to be the week after that. Zach Wilson in December. Dan Jones in December. And then we finish the season with Justin Fields. I think that's more than half of our remaining games against guys who are pretty damn mobile. So I just want to point out.
I'm going to give you that Daniel Jones is mobile. I don't respect Carson Wentz at all, and I don't respect Sam Darnold at all. And also, I don't really respect Daniel Jones at all. I'm sorry, Zach Wilson, the Jets quarterback.
Oh, he can move, man.
I think he's a bad quarterback, so I'm not really too concerned about it.
Well, but if it's about creativity, if it's about him,
I don't think he can. I think we're past like Kyler. I honestly forgot we were playing the Cardinals, so that's on me. Kyler and Josh Allen, I'm very concerned about. They are on the mobility level of Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts. They are some of the most mobile quarterbacks in different ways, but some of the most mobile quarterbacks in the NFL. The other guys, I just think they're all very bad. So I'm not really as concerned about it, more on the Justin Fields level.
I'm talking more just in terms of some people would say Justin Fields is very bad, and he almost kicked our ass this week. So I'm just saying there's definitely reasons to shore it up. That's all I'm saying.
You got me there. Justin Fields is also bad right now.
Okay. So I'm just saying, all I'm saying is if that's an area where we have a severe weakness, we do have a number of opponents coming up where that could be an area where they exploit us. Mm-hmm. So, hopefully we get that stuff figured out. And like you said, there are ways to do it. So, and familiarity is an understandable thing that we are currently lacking in. Yeah. So we won though. That's the bottom line. We're 4-1 against a baffling 4-1 to me, but we are 4-1. It's inarguable. We're currently by record one of the top teams in the NFL. There's no denying it. Things are looking really good. First quarter, it's a little hard these days. The season is not divided up into quarters as cleanly as it used to be. But essentially, I like to think of the first 5 games because the first game is kind of a throwaway game.
Yep.
I like to think of the first 5 games as the traditional first quarter of the season now.
That's right? An underrated thing that we're missing about the 16-game schedule is we can no longer say a quarter of the season or half of the season because mathematically doesn't exist anymore.
Doesn't exist. But I'm going to call it quarter because that first game is kind of a preseason game anyway. First quarter of the season in the mirror. We're 4-1. It doesn't feel great all the time, but it does, winning's winning. This is a strange team. We're still, I think we still, even 5 games in, I think we still.
There are a lot of question marks about this football team. I don't know. We're 4-1. Our offense looks pretty good generally. Our defense, while it's not good, has held up at least well enough against, lower caliber teams. We haven't had major tests against good teams except the one we failed miserably against the Eagles. So I think there are a lot of open questions about how far this team can go. And I really don't know with the offense how it's going to hold up when we play better defenses either.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't know a lot of things, but we do know some things. So Matt, let's do a little segment here after the first quarter of the season. We used to do a whole first quarter breakdown, talk about the whole division, blah, blah, blah. That we're not doing that this year. Let's just talk about the 3 things that we know about this young season here. The 3 things we know about the Minnesota Vikings right now. Matt, why don't you kick us off? Tell us 3 things that you know.
The number one thing I know about the Minnesota Vikings is that Kirk Cousins is the same old Kirk Cousins. I think you're getting the same quarterback performance. Maybe he likes his head coach more, and that makes a difference. But if today, and this is on Wednesday, I think he had a quote about he wants to use his legs more, and he thinks he can be more effective using his legs. I swear we've heard that for 5 seasons in a row. Every single season he's been a quarterback, we've heard that exact same quote. And I think if you look at who he is playing as, and he had a little bit of accuracy struggles early on. I think that's calmed down. He's still the efficient pre-snap reader. He's still, making good decisions generally, but he's also still not making very aggressive decisions. He talked about himself in the Saints game, how he missed a few deep shots. He, in this game, I think missed one or two plays as well, where he wasn't taking an aggressive decision and taking a safe decision. Now, this has been very good and very effective for us. And I think with better offensive play design, which is what we've had this year, that leads to a very successful Kirk Cousins. But it's not some sort of elevated, now all of a sudden he's an elite quarterback under Kevin O'Connell, right?
Wait, Matt, are you telling me that our 34-year-old quarterback didn't take a giant, enormous leap in this brand new offense that we brought in for him?
and maybe I'll be proven wrong with this statement, right? But he's playing the same as he always has, I think. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because there's a lot of good with Kirk Cousins as your quarterback, but it's the same as it always has. And if you look at Kirk statistically, this has actually been his worst season with the Minnesota Vikings so far. 2018 is arguable in terms of how bad he is, but it has been his least efficient season as a passer since 2018, and if you go back to Washington, like it's one of his least efficient seasons as a passer ever. He's averaging.
You need to clip this like right now. Put this on your Twitter, because I did not know that.
Just from a statistical standpoint, if you look at ANYA or EPA per play or anything like that, he has not been performing well overall. I
had no idea.
I think part of that is the touchdown to interception ratio that he has going right now. I think he's thrown 5 picks, which is kind of rare for him, and only like 7 touchdowns or something like that. So that's a big part of it, but he's not averaging a lot of yards per attempt either. It's been kind of a low and slow offense. There's been a lack of explosives. We only have one play over 30 yards since week 1. So it's been kind of a dink and dunk offense.
You put that in our notes, and I looked at that for like 5 minutes because I was like, is that true? Like all these weapons, that seems like something that will change though, doesn't it?
So I think it's kind of a league-wide trend. I mean, people have been talking forever about how offenses are down. Playing too high shells really limits those explosive plays. I mean, look at the number of explosive plays that the Vikings have allowed, right? We've allowed other teams to consistently drive the ball against us, but we haven't let up a ton of explosives. We had the one busted coverage in the Eagles game. We had the Darnell Mooney play in that game, but I can't really call out a ton of other plays where somebody has gotten totally behind the defense and gotten, 50, 60 yards against us. So I think it's kind of a league-wide trend of just the change of defenses, and we've been doing a good job of taking what they've given us, but it hasn't led to explosive stats as people might have expected. So take number 1 is that Kirk Cousins is the same old Kirk Cousins. What's your first take here?
Oh, okay. We'll do the turns. I like that. My first take is probably not the hottest take, but I just think it's pretty clear to me that Coach Kev has a future in this league and that he belongs as a head coach. Because I think, you look at what Brian Daboll, if you asked me at the beginning of the year, if Brian Daboll even liked his team, I would have told you, I think he hates his team. Like that was the impression that I was really getting from, training camp and stuff for them, exact opposite experience for us. But the point I'm making here is that he's getting a lot of accolades right now for dragging a really, really poor talent roster to a good record. And I think it's overshadowing what Coach Kev is accomplishing here, because this is really impressive. To be 4-1 with this team that's sort of really needed new leadership. It needed. There's no guarantees in football, right? There's no guarantees that you take a roster with talent that's proven it can do things in the past. It's no guarantee that you're going to step in and command respect from all those veterans and immediately know how to use them and use them successfully and win 4 of your first 5 games. There's absolutely no reason to expect that. You hope for it and you think, okay, so that's my biggest impression, I think, from the team so far, is that no matter how much I'm not enjoying the team right now and all those other things, and I try not to rail on it every week because that's tedious. But um, I am really impressed with him. I'm really impressed with how he's able to make this work because I don't think it should be working. So, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest with you,
So
it's very impressive.
no, I agree with you, and I think I had major questions of this after week 2 because the team kind of seemed to give up on that game, but they've been really really competitive in the past few games, and I think one, like, if you look at wins of one score games, they're not consistent year to year. I don't think there's a magic coaching thing that makes you good at that, but I think just the team's willingness to fight and overcome mistakes and not seem to be like like they are a lot looser this year than they were last year, right? It really seemed like things completely spiraled out of control towards the end of the Zimmer tenure, and obviously there's been a ton of stuff that's come out about that.
Yeah,
But it's like, it's the team seems to be playing a lot looser this year, and having the faith in their coach, I think definitely matters.
yeah,
So
it's made a big difference.
I'm gonna roll it into my second take here, which I hope
All
I'm
right.
not stealing one of yours, but Justin Jefferson is certified elite. The
That's
only way,
that's bro. My second note is JJ is the best receiver in football. So
there you
let's
go.
just say
There you
there we
go. I
go.
mean, there's only, so we both have the same second take. I think there's not
Yeah,
much we have to say about it. The only way you can
yeah,
stop Justin Jefferson is by dedicating 2 resources to him the entire game, and then that opens up everything else in the Vikings offense. So
absolutely. And if you want a fun follow, friend of the show at Roundy Mass on Twitter is doing a JJ2K tracker, and it's awesome. And you should totally follow that because I think he's going to get it.
all right, so
Uh,
go hit us with take number 3 then.
okay, I'll hit us with take. Well, okay. So one of the underrated aspects of the team right now is, you look at the stats, maybe they're not as impressive some weeks, whatever. Our sack rate actually is apparently the same as it was last year, which blows my mind. But I think the offensive line play has improved greatly. And I think a lot of that has to do with a Rick Spielman masterpiece in Christian Darrisaw.
Yes.
I think he's one of those offensive tackles that you look for. He's he's, we use the term game changer almost exclusively to refer to, players who make big splashy plays. But I think that an offensive tackle playing at the level that Christian Darrisaw seems to be playing at, that is a literal game changer, and you can see it on the field, and it's definitely playing a role in our success this year. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think Christian Darrisaw has a top 5 PFF grade. I don't know if he's quite played at a top 5 tackle level. Like, the Saints game he had a couple struggles, the Eagles game he had a couple struggles, but at the end of the day, the Vikings have been leaving him on an island a ton. He is like top 3 or maybe number 1 per PFF in terms of the number of true pass sets he has had where he's had zero help. And that's really important for the Vikings offensive line as a whole. Nick and I beat this to death over the offseason, but we weren't so concerned about the Vikings needing to go out and sign somebody like J.C. Treader or something to replace Garrett Bradbury immediately, because our hope was the Vikings would take their 2 supposedly very good tackles that they have, leave them on islands, and leave the 3 interior players to kind of help each other out there. And that's exactly what they've done on the offensive line. Now, Bradbury's grade has been a lot better. Materially, I think maybe he's playing a little bit better against the pass, but I think primarily his improvement has been that he's had extra bodies and extra help inside there. Obviously, Ed Ingram has struggled a little bit as well, but again, allowing you to have that 3-man wall in the middle is a lot better than we were getting situations where Bradbury was stuck one-on-one when we had to help out left tackles in the past. So I think that has made a major improvement, and I think you're dead on that Christian Darrisaw is a hit and really a big part of the reason the offensive line is succeeding.
Absolutely. Give us your third one.
So
we'll
my
move on.
my third one, and I guess this is the final one because we both had JJ, is that the Vikings cornerbacks are going to hold this team back from being a true competitor. I just think that Chandon Sullivan obviously got cooked by Darnell Mooney. I think he's screwing up a lot in pass protection in terms of passing things off in zones, with Jordan Hicks. And then Patrick Peterson, I think, is a quality starter. Like, I am good with Patrick Peterson probably as a secondary option at starting at corner if you have a true number one guy across from him. The problem
Hmm.
is Patrick Peterson is our best corner and Cameron Dantzler is worse than him. Cameron Dantzler, I talked about him giving too much cushion. I think when he's in man, he gets beat too easily. There was a rep, and it was from a stack alignment, so it's a difficult assignment where he just let Darnell Mooney absolutely school him on a whip route. Even the final play of the game where he forced a fumble, he had to force it after he got completely beat and knocked to the ground, fell to the ground trying to tackle Amir Smith-Marset, right? And then we got lucky because Amir Smith-Marset was he had some intel that Amir was loose with the ball, as he said. So and
Yeah.
just all the underneath throws to that side. If you look at the Eagles game, they constantly hit that area over and over and over again, and he
Sure.
does a good job of tackling. I think I will say I think he does a pretty good job of tackling, but
That
when that's your
that
number one thing
forced
you say about a corner, it's not a good sign.
right. I will say this though, that forced fumble is a lot like in a video game when you teabag your opponent, like
Yeah,
after you shot them in a game or whatever.
yeah,
That
that's just
forced
like
fumble was
oh
I
that
felt
that
I
that
felt bad
quote
for Amir.
that quote is what that was. That quote
Yeah.
was dancing on Amir Smith Marsette's
Oh
grave.
man, that is a brutal play for him for that young player in the mirror. I hope he recovers. All right. Okay, let's talk very briefly. This is a really we've got okay, let's talk about the game coming up.
Yep.
Let's talk about the Dolphins. It's an opportunity, I think, that's right there for the taking to go 5-1. Um, the Dolphins started the year very hot, very hot, very playing very interesting football. They were the talk of the league in certain circles, and then that came crashing to earth with the Tua injury. All the bad press from that, most of it completely deserved. Maybe all of it completely deserved. Just totally took the wind out of the sails for the Dolphins. And then right after that, they have injuries to their two big superstars at wide receiver. Um, let's talk a little bit about the Dolphins. First of all, let's talk about the quarterback position.
Yep.
Tua's not going to start. As of right now, recording on a Wednesday night, we've been told Skylar Thompson is the starter.
Correct.
For those of you who don't know, that's like a division. It's like a
He went to Kansas State. He
Division
played in the Big
two.
12.
Did he really? I didn't even know
Yeah.
that. All right.
But he's a
He's a
seventh round draft
record-setting
pick.
QB. Right.
I liked Skylar Thompson a lot coming out, so this is
A
like a little bit of
little painful for
it's
you.
very interesting to me that we get to play him with a full week.
Yeah. So
Obviously,
so either we face Skyler or we face our beloved and former QB Teddy Bridgewater, coming off of a concussion with absolutely no practice, hasn't played a full game for the Dolphins yet. Really tough situation there for Teddy if he ends up being the starter. Are we afraid of either one of these guys?
not particularly. I mean, Skylar
Particularly.
Thompson ultimately was a seventh round pick for a reason, right? He
Right.
maybe has a week of getting reps with the ones, but I'm not sure that's exactly something you want to bank on for a rookie quarterback. Now, there is also the factor of a lot of rookies kind of have an advantage because they'll simplify the offense, and if any offense can get pretty simplified pretty quick and be destructive, it's going to be this Dolphins offense with these wide receivers, even if they're a little bit banged up. But and opposing teams don't really have a scouting report on them in their first game, so it's like it's kind of a situation where they're just doing vanilla stuff, or they're just doing what they normally prepare against the offense, and the other team might have a bit of an advantage there. But with
Right.
that being said, I'm not particularly concerned about an opposing seventh round pick coming in on a in a tough situation, right? I think seeing what happened to Tua is just tough emotionally on a team as well, right? And those
Right.
emotions can create problems. Having concussions in back-to-back weeks, having all of the bad press in the media about your team, I think that might matter a little bit. Now,
Anytime you see your friend, and I'm not
yeah,
making light of this, it's anytime you see someone fencing, that's really scary.
yeah.
That's I mean, I know they're big tough football players and everything, but I know that's got to be weighing on everybody a little bit.
I don't know how you come back out and finish a game after that, which they had to do on Thursday night, right? It's really really difficult. So, but also people respond in different ways. Maybe that becomes a rallying point for them. So it's
Sure.
it's an unknown, which was a bit of a concern, but it doesn't scare me per se.
Sure.
Now, if I flip it over into, you mentioned the wide receivers. Both of the wide receivers have had recent injuries. Jalen Waddle was on the injury report with a groin injury against the Jets. He didn't produce very much. But again, tough circumstances with this rookie quarterback having to come in after like 2 plays, and now your game plan with Teddy's totally thrown out the window because you've got a different quarterback with a different skill set.
Right.
So Tyreek Hill apparently was in a walking boot after the Jets game. My guess is he just got like his foot stepped on, like he got cleated or something, because the Dolphins have also been like, he's full bore, he's going to play this week, or he's most likely to play this week. So I'm not sure either of those injuries is a huge concern for those players, which means that they could still be a huge concern for the Vikings, right? Obviously, you have two guys with 4.3 speed. I don't know if Tyreek Hill's in the 4.2s, he probably is, but it's like, who can just take anything to the house, right? And Tua was doing a
And,
very good
and
job of getting quick
that's
plays
in
to them, and they run after the catch. And it's like the
in that
Vikings,
scenario we struggled with.
yeah.
Just
Yeah, the
dealing with
Vikings
fast
lack
guys.
team speed on defense, I think, ultimately. Our corners aren't very fast. Patrick Peterson isn't very fast at this point, and neither Cameron Dantzler is not all that fast, despite that 4.340 that came out during the combine that was clearly doctored. But so the Vikings, with their two high shells, should be able to stay on top of the Dolphins. But still, the short yardage run after the catch stuff is something the Vikings have been allowing a lot of this year. And the danger is amplified when you have two electrifying players. So if the Dolphins are able to do that, and also Raheem Mostert, who has 4.3 speed as well at the running back position, like they're a very fast team. So that would concern me from the Dolphins. But overall, led by a rookie quarterback, this is a game we should expect the Vikings to win, I would say. At
That
least
to
on the,
me,
yeah.
sorry, not to cut you off, but I totally agree. Like, to me, it's I think the only chance that those guys have to score on us is going to be if both those receivers play, and they play without, limping around out there. If they're banged up in any way, if they're not, if they're 60% of who they are or whatever, like, I just don't see I just don't see it. I mean, okay, you've got, let's say though that they play well for some reason, and they are actually, putting some points on us. On the other side of the ball, they're pretty susceptible to big plays, are they not? We've had some trouble getting the ball, making those big splash
Yeah.
plays like we talked about. Do we
So
think that changes this week
on the
against the
defensive
Dolphins?
side of the ball for the Dolphins, they've been very susceptible to big plays this year. I mentioned that our longest play since week 1 is 31 yards, and that's our only play, I believe, that's 30 yards or over. Everything else has been in the 20s. The Dolphins have allowed a play of at least that length, and they've allowed plays of at least 40 yards in every single game this season. They've allowed 9 such plays where it's been over 31 yards. There were like 3 of those against the Ravens. The Jets, Michael Carter took a screen a very long way last week. The Bills had 1 or 2. The Bengals had it might have been 2 50-yard touchdowns. They had 3 plays over 40 yards as well. So
Right.
it's been a really big issue for the Dolphins, and I believe that the issue is secondary injuries coupled with the fact that they are a very aggressive defense by nature. So we remember last year, everybody probably watched the Ravens-Dolphins game where Lamar got blitzed into oblivion, right? And that was Brian Flores, but they still have the same defensive coordinator who was with them last year, Josh Boyer. He's just now their play caller. So they like to blitz a lot, and they have, when they're healthy, the corner talent to leave them on islands, and Byron Jones and Xavier Howard. But Xavier Howard's been banged up all year, and he's let up a few big plays. This season he's been responsible for a lot of these. He's banged up again. He might not be able to go. That leads to a backup, which is naturally worse. Very good for the Vikings, who have a very talented receiving core, right? If we get Justin Jefferson matched up on a backup in a single high defense like we did against the Bears, we're going to throw the ball to him, and he's going to have 12 catches for 150 yards like he did against the Bears. Like, I think that's going to lead to a very successful offensive day. Also, I believe Christian Wilkins on their defensive line is banged up. He's one of their better defensive linemen, obviously a first round pick a few years ago. They have a pretty talented defensive line. in general. It's maybe a little bit underrated with Jalen Phillips, the first round pick from last year, and then Emmanuel Ogba, the kind of defensive tackle edge rusher, more of a power rusher kind of type body. Uh, so they're pretty talented across the board on defense, but they're still pretty banged up, and I think that'll lead to success for the Vikings on offense as well. Overall, given what we've seen from the Vikings when we talked about it, I don't expect them to blow the Dolphins out, but I do expect them to be able to take a lead and kind of maintain it and win the football game.
Okay. So you just buried the lead there a little bit. That's your pick then.
Yeah.
You're picking the Vikings this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll
your...
take the Vikings. I don't know what the current line is. Obviously, that was probably very much subject to change given their quarterback situation. But I would say, it's another game in the 20s where it's kind of 28-20 or something like that. And the Vikings take it. If the Dolphins offense is more frisky, maybe it's a 28-24 game like against the Lions or something.
Okay. All right. I'm looking at this and I like the Dolphins' trajectory this season. I think that, towards the end of the year, once they get over some of these injury issues, I think they're going to be a team you really don't want to see, especially, towards playoffs time. I'm just looking at it this week, and I just don't think they have the horses. I just don't think they can. I don't think they have the horses to play with us, honestly. Like they're third string quarterbacks, and we have a history there, but I just don't see it, man. I don't see it this week. I think we're gonna. I'm not gonna go as far as say blowout because that's ridiculous picking a blowout, but I think I agree with you. We're gonna score in the 20s, and I don't really see these guys putting up a lot of points. Maybe I'll look a little foolish if Hill and Waddle are like totally healthy and they manage to manufacture some stuff, but I don't see it, man. I don't see it.
Yeah, I think at the very least, unless you want to be a completely doomy Vikings fan the entire year, right? You should expect the Vikings to win this football game given the circumstances the Dolphins are playing with. If Tua were playing and if their secondary was healthy, like that'd be an entirely different story. But the Vikings have the majority of their core pieces healthy or almost all of our core pieces healthy. I don't know if a starter is really at risk of missing the game. Like Dalvin's been playing with the shoulder thing, and that's the only major piece that has had a significant injury this season. Besides Harrison Smith missed the game with the concussion, right? So it's like the Vikings are playing at basically full strength, and the Dolphins are playing multiple men down. If the Dolphins were at full strength, it's a different story. But it's significant for the Vikings. I think they should be significantly favored in this game.
I think we're lucky that we're getting them right now. I'll put it that way.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Very fortunate in terms of the timing.
Yep. All right. So it's that time, Matt. We're going to wrap up the show here. We're going to play 15 seconds of fantasy, except it's called 10 seconds of fantasy this week. And hey, every week I'm on the show.
We've been doing it. We just skipped it last week. We skipped it last week, so
that's fair. But we like to on the show. We know that you don't want to hear us talk about our fantasy teams, but we desperately want to talk about them. So we dedicate, in this case, 10 seconds of the show
and 1 minute of an intro to the segment.
Of course, this is the bit, Matt. Let me do my bit. All right. So Matt, you get 5 seconds to talk about your team. Go.
I'm pretty down in the dumps. We got injuries. I hope Dak comes back and gets healthy and gets me on the right track.
I am on the rise, however. I am healthy as hell. I got my young guys coming back. I'm hot. All right. Matt, where can people find you on Twitter?
At Fries Football.
At Fries Football. Nick Olson wasn't able to join us this evening. We miss him. We love him. If he hears this, you can find him at Nick Olson NFL on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter or on Instagram at You've Been Gregg. You can find the show on Twitter at Kindred Skulls. We're available wherever you listen to your podcasts, and you can find our video content on YouTube by searching for Kindred Skulls. Matt, do you have any last words this evening?
Again, I think it's hilarious that Emir Smith-Marset is the reason that we won this football game. Like,
no, just bring him in to screw us, and it ends up going the exact opposite.
Perfect double agent.
I do feel bad for him though. I liked Emir. So, Matt, I love you, man.
Yeah.
Have a great night.
Yeah. Skull Vikings, everybody.
Skull Vikes, baby.
Goal, baby.
Another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all cheer on behind. And we'll score the old Vikings along. We'll score